Welcome to Down the Barrel Podcast with Jimmy and Dino. Get ready to dive into the wild world of Minnesota hunting, trapping, and wildlife. We'll be chatting with some folks who protect, manage, and promote the great outdoors. But don't worry, we'll also have some laughs as we chat about guns, whiskey, and anything else that catches our eye. So grab a drink, sit back, and get ready for a good time.
The Minnesota Deer Hunters Association and Wolf Report proudly sponsor this podcast. However, please note that the opinions, topics, and guests featured may not necessarily align with the views, beliefs, goals, and mission of our sponsors.
Down the Barrel Podcast is brought to you by the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association
and Wolf Report. Wolf Report, a platform dedicated to elevating the voices of Minnesota hunters, trappers, and outdoor enthusiasts. Join us in advocating for responsible wolf management in Minnesota. Share your reports, photos, and stories, and together we will ensure that they are seen by all.
The Minnesota Deer Hunters Association, protecting the future of deer and deer hunting through habitat, education, advocacy, and legislation.
Down the Barrel. I'm Jimmy.
And I'm Dino. And today we're going to be talking with Adventuress Magazine creator Jen Pudenz and Kate Small of Western Wolf Academy. We're glad to have you ladies here with us today. So, and Kate, you're in Idaho. Okay, yes. Great. And then Jen, you're in Hibbing.
I'm in northern Minnesota and Hibbing.
Gotcha. Perfect. Mm-hmm. Well, we're glad you guys could, meet with us today and do the podcast. We're excited to have you on. So,
right. Thanks for having us.
We're talking about wolves.
Yeah. So obviously, why we're here is to talk about Adventuress Magazine and a great Managing Wolves article that was in there. And so we can just go ahead and kind of roll right into it let's kind of talk with Jennifer a little bit about Adventuress Magazine and, let you take it away for a minute.
Yes. So I'm the owner of Adventuress Magazine, and Adventuress is actually the only women's hunting and fishing magazine. And truly, it's been done in a way that's never been done, or I do it in a way that's never been done before. It's a high quality print magazine now, and it has the most informative articles that are written specifically for women by experienced outdoor women. And so it's structured very much to where it's just a lot to learn from, to get inspired, to try something new, and, just really supports and gives credit to women. So cool. Also with that, I have an online store with Adventuress. And so I, as the owner, I'm also the editor and person that creates and runs everything within Adventuress. So
very nice. That's awesome. And how long have you been doing Adventuress Magazine?
I've actually been doing it almost for 10 years. Wow. It was originally a digital magazine at first. And then at the beginning of 2023, I relaunched it into a high quality print magazine. So
very nice. Yeah, very nice. That's pretty neat. So obviously it's not necessarily regional. It's how far is your national? How far is your reach?
Yeah, it is a national as well as it reaches Canada as well. So of course, with me being from the Midwest and in the Midwest, that is kind of the home base for it. But it definitely reaches out beyond that as well. So, and something that I am really grateful for is that I get to work with women that are from all across the nation and Canada. And that's how Kate Small got involved with this here. So with the hot topic of wolves and how this is such a huge problem in northern Minnesota, where I recently moved to just, a few years ago. So I'm newer to all of this. And then with the recent releases in Colorado, that really made me decide to take a stand, even though this is a very risky thing. And most people don't want to take a stand because, you can easily get hated on. So I see this as like a 1 in a million thing that I got to work with Kate. And I feel like the pair of us, really created something that's never been done before, with the perspective of wolf hunting coming from women hunters, and that Kate actually lives in Idaho, where hunting is actually legal because most of the country isn't legal for that. And so for that to be such a limited area, plus a woman that not only has wolf hunted before, but that's your thing, Kate. And you even teach classes on how to wolf hunt. It's been such a pleasure to get to work with her, and that's what kind of kicked off all of this with the current issue of the magazine.
Yeah, no, that's great. And obviously, with leading into that, Kate, you want to introduce yourself a little bit and then kind of talk about how, the article came about and,
How you got in touch with Jen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Kate Small. I live in Idaho, as Jen said, and I think I had just I'm a registered nurse, and I had just taken a new job, and it was a work from home job because I live in the middle of nowhere. And I was at that job for about a week, and it was trapping season. And I think I posted a thing about like, I'd rather be on my trap line right now. And I had decided, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. And I wrote a post about quitting my job and how I just wanted to live life and run my trap line. And I think that's when you reached out and you're like, I would love you to write an article. I can't, you're like, I'd love to help you in any way I can. And that's how.
You're right. I actually forgot about that. I forgot about that post. That was exactly how I reached out to you.
And so that was kind of awesome. And then working with her has been amazing. It's so neat to see a magazine just for women, because you don't get that a lot or at all, just in this case. And so that was pretty cool. But yeah, wolf hunting and trapping is kind of what I do now. Just because I grew up in Oregon and I didn't start hunting till late in the game. I was 19 and my stepdad introduced me to it when he married my mom. But in Oregon, even starting at 19, there were ungulates, the deer and elk around. And through the years, saw less deer, saw less elk, but more wolf sign. And then I moved to Idaho. And in Idaho, I was like, hey, you guys can actually hunt wolves and you can trap wolves. In Oregon, you can't do anything about it. Your hands are tied and you have to live with them. And so that's kind of when I shifted my focus. I was like, all right, if I'm going to take an ungulate, I feel like it's my responsibility as a hunter to take a predator as well. And having the ability to try and help manage wolves, I wanted to get into that and really start, because I have two small kids as well. And I want them to grow up and be able to hunt and have the experiences I've been able to have. And so that's how I got really into this.
Very nice. So Oregon sounds a lot like Minnesota.
Right.
Where obviously, like you said, notice the deer population, ungulate population, declining, and wolves, increasing. So
you can't do anything about it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Not as of yet.
Right.
Working on it. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, so how is Idaho being able to hunt and manage wolves?
Well, I'll give you some Idaho history. Just so wolves in Idaho were introduced or reintroduced. That's a whole nother topic of whether we already had these Canadian timber wolves or not, but they were introduced in 1995. And during that time, they were introduced by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. During that time, the original recovery goal in the Northern Rocky Mountain population segment, which is Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana, and the eastern third of Oregon and Washington, and then a small portion of Utah, the original goal was 300 in that entire area.
Wow.
And yeah, wow. And Idaho, it was deemed that fully recovered was 150 wolves, and that the long-term carrying capacity in that whole area of all those states was 1,500. Well, fast forward to today, and our latest count is 1,337 in Idaho alone. So that's kind of how we got here. Is left unmanaged, wolves will grow 40% annually. And so it's imperative to manage them. They're not like any other predator. bears, mountain lions, they're having their litters every other year with, 1 to 2. Sometimes you get 4. That's very rare. Wolves, they'll tell you that they're only breeding. There's a breeding pair. That's just not true. They're dogs. Any female that goes into heat, those males are going to breed. So packs are having multiple litters. And those litter sizes, the average is 4 to 5. Sometimes there's less, but there are dogs. I've heard of 13 being in one litter. So they're just growing rapidly. And I think in 2009 in Idaho, wolves were delisted so you could start hunting them. And it was just too late at that point. We still cannot keep up. And today, Idaho has the most liberal hunting regulations in the lower 48. And we're not even touching it, and hunters.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I read in your article where they gave out like 53,000 licenses in the state, and the success rate was pretty sad.
0.006%.
Yeah.
That is the fact that I share the most out of your article, because that is just mind-boggling. That, especially too when Minnesota is in this boat, where we're pretty much already too late. But even if we get to that point where we get hunting regulations again, with success rates like that, and it's only going to get harder as wolves get more educated, as people hunt them, like that's a really big concern for the future of just, we can't really even unwind this, it's going to take a lot.
Because likely, if you guys get a hunting season, they're going to start out with a wolf quota. And you guys are going to meet that fairly quickly because the wolves are uneducated now. So those first couple years of hunting, everybody's going to slay them really quickly. As soon as those wolves become educated, they get harder and harder to hunt. And so you take advantage those first years, but inevitably they'll set a quota. So you can't really do anything about the problem.
Yeah, in our first wolf season back in 2012,
I think.
Yeah, don't quote me on these numbers. It was something like 300, and it was supposed to be a 2-week hunting period, I believe.
Something like that.
2-week hunting season, and I think they reached the quota, and actually they exceeded the quota rather quickly. So obviously, just like you're saying, they're uneducated at this point. So the first few years are going to be, gangbusters to get them done, but still not enough, right away.
It's going to get harder. I think that's such a great point in this article. And I'll hold up. Let's see, I'll hold up one of the magazines too. I think this is just such an incredible cover as well. So I'm very honored to work with Kate's photo and work with Kate. But also, she just did such a great job with this article. Something that I really wanted to, have us be careful about is that we're not just sharing a bunch of opinions that really, like, everything is facts in here that she shared. And even, with certain opinions of why she hunts and stuff, that's all of it is really like nothing you can really even argue about. And I think it's so important that, this was really sticking to the facts and the history that, we need to be paying attention to this history in Minnesota, what's happening elsewhere and learning from that.
Yeah, it's hard. And unfortunately, there's a lot of even hunters that are so uneducated on the subject that I'll have hunters say, why would you hunt a wolf? I would never do that. And until you live with them like I do and like you guys do, you won't understand why. And that's why I think getting the facts out are so important. Unfortunately, you deal with a lot of anti-hunters as well, and you can't argue facts with emotion, but you can at least try.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So then with this article, along with Kate's facts on Idaho and that information, I added a couple editors breakouts then to tie in with me being in Minnesota and what's happening in Minnesota. But again, this kind of all started with me with what was happening in Colorado. I feel so bad for the people that are in Colorado, with the recent releases starting, and they're continuing to plan releases. And I think that's such a main thing, is that there's so much misinformation out there, and so many people that just don't understand, both hunters and non-hunters. But really, I mean, if you're in the woods and you see or if you're in the woods and you, are reading the facts, it's just, to me, it's so plain as day. But there's just so many people that truly don't understand. And also with so many of the anti-hunting wolf websites and stuff, how they have all their language and everything is truly to make hunters be out to, or hunters are made out
Yeah.
Like bloodthirsty, killers, and that we do this all for sport and da 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 da. And that was a big part of this for me too, with this issue coming from women hunters. And with Kate, Kate's a mom with 2 small kids. Like, I think that's why the anti-hunters target women above anything else, pretty much, is because we kind of destroy that picture that they try to paint, that, hunters are just these bloodthirsty monsters. Well, it's hard to kind of argue with that when it's coming from a nurturing mom who, explains why she hunts, and using the land, to feed her family and everything like that. So I think this information coming from Kate and women hunters is so important. And again, it's about just like helping people know the facts, and getting rid of some of this misinformation. And also, again, with that, back to Colorado, they lost by vote of 50.9%, I believe it was. And the same stats I've heard from Minnesota is that, about 50% of people are for or against wolf hunting. And I think both states are very common with how people in the cities aren't dealing with the wolves and these issues.
Correct.
So they're, of course, going to be voting to release the wolves, voting against hunting. And they don't care or know how they're affecting the people that are living with the wolves every day. So I guarantee you, if you could split split Colorado, where it was only voters that were living in those areas versus, the cities weren't able to vote, I guarantee you they wouldn't be releasing wolves right now. There's just, again, so much misinformation out there, and people that just don't understand. So I think that's why this is so important.
Well, and it's not just that with the ungulate decline, which is huge, but it's also changed their behaviors, which affects farmers and ranchers. So now, and you'll see it in Colorado as well as time goes on, their elk are going to move down from those mountains onto safe private farm grounds where they can get away easier, where they feel safer because there's more people around. And what's happening in Idaho is they're eating all the hay and the crops that these farmers work so hard for, or the ranchers are feeding their cattle with. And it's costing millions of dollars across the state. And not to mention the wolf livestock conflict where wolves are coming down and eating cattle. And so it's so multifactorial. We're also seeing wolves following mountain lions. And when a mountain lion gets a kill, the wolves are chasing that mountain lion off the kill. And then you're seeing that mountain lion kill again and again. And so it's interesting. You get the argument, oh, they only kill the young or the old or the weak and the sick. And that's just not true. Just from my experience, how many mature bull elk I've found just hamstringed, left alive by wolves or moose kills, not eaten. And at the end of the day, like I said earlier, they're a dog, and not to compare it just they're not your domestic dog, but they have those instincts where something runs by, that dog gets up and chases it. It might not be hungry, and it's no fault of the wolf. It's their instinct. It takes a bite, maims it a little, it isn't hungry. It's like, oh, never mind, I'm bored now, and walks away. And that just happens. Or they're chasing elk and the elk are pregnant and you're seeing all these spontaneous abortions. And we just don't think about all that. And so there's so much to it that
right.
Yeah, I thought those were such important parts of your article that again, people don't really think about all of the other ways that this is impacting other animals and the ecosystem as a whole, and just all the problems that it creates. Also, why Dean and I were at the Duluth show, we would have people coming up talking about the issues they have had. One was he was a pilot that flew and watched moose, and he was saying how it was just absolutely devastating for what he's seen. Other people had said about bears being affected. So yeah, like this is a much bigger issue than just the deer or the elk itself too.
Yeah, and
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and even hound hunters. So here, wolves are taking the hound hunters' hounds and killing them. And so a ton of hound hunters I know, they're done. They're like, we lost our dogs. We're not doing it anymore. And so then they're not running bears or mountain lions, and there goes our predator population. And so,
yeah. And I don't know what it is about predators that so many people think that that they don't need managed. Of all things, you would think a super predator especially needs to be managed. And I don't know why people like to think the opposite. And it's like, that is such a big part of the balance of everything for nature and wildlife.
Well, it is. And that's what MDHA is, obviously that's what this whole thing's about, is managing wolves. And that's what we've been trying to get across for, working on wolf management, predator management, deer management, for years since we started. So, and that's where this, all came about as well, is obviously we want to manage the wolves,
right?
And everything else as well that goes along with that, like you've been saying. So that's the big point of this as well.
The Minnesota Deer Hunters Association has been building our hunting and conservation legacy over the past 40 plus years through habitat, education, advocacy, and legislation in Minnesota for Minnesota.
I was just going to ask, how many wolves are you guys allowed to take yearly in Idaho?
It's unlimited. We can take as many as you want, and they're so hard to hunt. We're still not touching them.
Population, does somebody track that?
Does somebody track how many we're taking?
Yeah, you must have a yearly count.
Yeah, so you still have to tag them, but you can buy unlimited tags, and that's for hunting and trapping. And once you get a wolf, you have to take it into Fish and Game to have it be checked in. And so they're doing studies and they're watching the population. Fish and Game's do a count every year. I think I already said our last count was 1,337. It's worth noting that they do not count the Selway and the Frank Church Wilderness, which are two of our biggest wilderness areas. And so we're not even getting the wolf populations in there.
Okay. And I think that's part of the stigma here in Minnesota, is if we start a wolf hunt, that we're not going to have wolves anymore.
Yeah. Well, and that they'll just put the kibosh on it. They'll have a limit. You guys had a quota here. If we ever drop down to a certain number, they'd shut down wolf hunting. And that's the point. We don't want them wiped off the landscape, but they need to be managed.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In Kate's article, she has the information in 2022, according to Idaho Fish and Game, 53,600 wolf tags were sold. That's where they can buy as many tags as they want. And only 351 wolves were reported harvested. So that's that 0.006% success rate. So yeah, that's a huge thing. And yeah, that's a great point that, again, if Minnesota gets wolf hunting back, that's not necessarily going to take care of the problem. And of course, it's going to be managed correctly if it gets into, lower numbers, but we're quite a ways from there. So it's not like, Minnesota would just totally wipe them out. So, right. And that brings me to another thing, Dean. You had sent a really interesting thing to me, explaining about why Minnesota is on the endangered list versus Idaho, even though we have a lot more wolves in northern Minnesota, actually.
Yes. Yeah. Minnesota has half the population of wolves in the lower 48. Somewhere.
Yeah.
That's
close to that.
Yeah. That's the stats that they tell us.
So, and that's just the northern part of the state, too. We know that.
Yeah. And if you look on the Wolf Report, it's amazing how many wolves are in, other parts of the state. We never would have guessed that. Or at least I wouldn't have, guessed that there's so many wolves, sightings that are further south than even Grand Rapids here. And, it's crazy how far they are around in Minnesota. But getting back to, so our Minnesota, let's see, is it Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan wolves are on the Endangered Species Act because they were not reintroduced. They've always been here. So this, I'm trying to think, the Great Lakes wolf, I'm going to get this wrong and somebody's going to attack me on it, but so our wolf population was never reintroduced. They've always been here. We never eradicated them or anything like that. So that's why our wolves are on the Endangered Species Act, where in Idaho and the Rocky Mountain wolves, they were, I don't know if they were exactly eradicated, but they were reintroduced.
Right.
Just like you said, when they brought in the Canadian, gray wolf. Mm-hmm. So that's where there's that's the distinction.
Well, I think they had an agreement. If they reintroduce them, they could have a wolf hunt.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, because that's why I was wondering. I'm like, how do we have so many numbers and we're on the endangered species list, where you can hunt them in the Rocky Mountains. So I didn't know if that had something to do with the mountain territory or what, but yeah, so that was an interesting fact to me, and understanding why we're in this position.
Yeah, and it comes down to the federal, courts adding them back to the endangered species, because we had a season for 2 years.
It was 3
years. We had a season for 3 years, and then they were taken off the ESA because they hit the numbers that they needed to at that point. Mm-hmm. And then abruptly after the season was over, they were put back on by a federal court. And then we've been advocating and trying to get them off for years, because they've hit those numbers according to the DNR in the state, and even what the ESA had set. But for whatever reason,
I think they had set 1,600, and we're 1,000 over that easily.
Oh, for sure. I think the DNR numbers were 2,700. I think that's what Jared had said.
Yeah, that's the official numbers.
Yeah. Yep.
I think it's agreed that those are even on the low end of most estimates too, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, correct.
So there's even thoughts of 5,000 to 6,000 wolves in northern Minnesota, right?
And I easily believe that, because you don't manage them; they're just populated and reproducing.
Yeah, like your numbers, they increase 40% every 2 years.
Yeah,
every year.
Every year.
Yeah, and of course, our numbers will be a little different than yours, and I'm sure, like, our wolves are they're so hard to hunt because their territory is 250 square miles, where you guys have more wolves than us. So they're going to have smaller territories. They're just going to have to adapt in that sense. But gosh, it's just insane. Your numbers.
Crazy. And it seems like, within the last year, especially, there has been just such a difference on truly what people are seeing in the woods, and having, a lot of stories with, seeing the wolves, issues with the wolves. It just seems like there's been a major change, especially within the last year, where it's gotten worse, by a lot.
They don't see you guys as predators yet. And so until you can hunt them, they're not going to be scared of you, which is terrifying.
It is terrifying.
And we've had, and another reason why it seems like everybody is, the wolves have always been here. We know that. Obviously, they get more populous every year, but their numbers go up and down. They fluctuate just as the deer population. We've had, quite a few severe winters, and so the deer population has been declining. And so, it's just, last year we had a really rough season. This year we've had a pretty good winter, but obviously the combination. And so certain areas are seeing less deer and more wolves in the, seems that they were getting around a little bit easier and becoming in more populous areas.
I think people are just getting sick of them too. They're attacking livestock and pets quite regular here.
Yeah. And with obviously trail cameras, those being out. So more people are in the woods with their cellular cameras and everything. So they're seeing more of their wildlife in the area. So of course they're going to see more and more wolves, and, they seem to be moving around quite a bit.
I think another thing to mention too, with Minnesota having so many lakes, we have some areas that are just huge, lakes. And then in the winter, those are frozen over. And it just seems like all the stories are that the wolves are just slaughtering the deer on the lakes. I think that's a really big thing with our area and the terrain and everything too, that it's an advantage for the wolves. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
And all the logging roads too, they really take advantage of around here.
Yep.
It's especially you get that deep snow and the elk are falling through, but wolves are running on top of it. And it's just that advantage that they have with those paws that just spread open like snowshoes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've had a good winter for the deer population here so far. Not so good for the wolves because we've had very little snowfall.
Yeah, I think this is the least amount of snowfall we've ever had.
Yeah, for quite a while for sure. So it'll be interesting to see the numbers. The deer population, how they kind of maybe bounce back after this winter. Obviously, they're not gonna, it's not going to be a big or a drastic bounce back, but definitely an easier winter than what they've had in the past 4 or 5 years for sure.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing you guys have deer at all. Just in Idaho, that each wolf eats an average of 20 big game animals per year. So it's so interesting. I'd love to see the charts on the decline.
Yeah, I think here they say they eat 40 a year, don't they? Yeah, I think that's what Voyager's Wolf Project is saying.
Yours wasn't counting, that stat, Kate, wasn't counting when they would just attack and leave something too, though, right? So it can be more. But yeah, I feel sorry for our deer. I really do. I'm like, especially, when they start having their fawns, it's just like, wow, I feel like you don't stand a chance.
Well, and the deer here, obviously, just, like in Idaho, they have other predators compete with too. Black bear,
coyotes,
and coyotes, the other, main predators we have in Minnesota still, they're still a big factor. But obviously, wolves are front and center at this point. And just like, we manage bears, like we've said, coyotes, they're
free for all.
Yeah. They're free for all. So, technically managed in a way, I guess, but, and that's again, managing wolves is the big topic. So
touchy topic around here.
I think I'd also like to bring up what somebody was arguing with me about with this topic too online, is that they were claiming that, when they drive, they see deer. So they're like, so there's no problem. There's deer out there. And I think that relates to how Kate said that, there in Idaho, the elk were changing their behavior and coming to the more populated areas to try to get away from the wolves. And I feel like I have absolutely saw that happening in Minnesota for deer and turkeys, that they are hanging around, the roads more and stuff like that, because I think that that's a way they can get away from the wolves. Is that something that you guys feel you've seen as well?
Yeah, I mean, I see deer in my field every night, all the time. So I think they just look for those open areas where, you go in the woods. It's a little more dangerous out there. I mean, because even at my place close to town, we get wolves on trail camera on the regular. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I've got wolves around my area, and I've got deer in my yard almost every night. And I've had bear in my yard as well. But I do agree that and I think that's why a lot of people are seeing more wolves in and around city limits, and maybe that's why pets are being taken, because obviously they're following where their prey is.
Yeah. But just like what I was meaning is, again, just because you're seeing deer still doesn't mean that there's not a problem out in the woods. It's just they're going to keep doing what they have to survive. And so sometimes that means, getting closer to people.
Well, and I'll get the same argument, like, I see deer, but I've never seen a wolf. And like I said, they have a 250 square mile territory, and a wolf's not going to stick around and stare at you. Maybe where you guys live, but here a wolf's not going to stick around because they know that they're close to death if they're seeing somebody usually.
No, they're pretty brave around here.
Yeah, for now.
Yeah.
For now, they're pretty brave.
Like in Minnesota, they're very brave, and they walk around like they have no worries in the world.
Like the one we saw when we were out shooting guns, we basically had to shoo it away.
Yeah. Really?
Exactly. Yeah, we did. Yeah. And that would have been early fall. It was a lone wolf. We way in on this back 40, that we were going to go shoot some guns at, and we pulled up, and he just kind of stood around. I mean, we had to holler and scream just to get him to move on.
Right. I didn't even want to let the kids out of the truck.
Yeah. Yep.
Because he just wasn't going to leave.
Well, and that's what's going to happen, and that's what it's going to take, is a couple of kids getting snatched out of their yards before you guys decide to do something about it,
Well, the good thing is hopefully that won't happen, and hopefully we can get some legislation done here very, very soon. Obviously, we all know that it's going to take, more than just 1 year, but any step forward is definitely a step forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely going to help.
Absolutely.
So, Kate, what's the best, or what's your method of, taking wolves? I mean, is it they're the most effective? Is it trapping? Is it?
So trapping is absolutely the most effective method. I think trapper success rates are around 25% compared to hunters. Granted that those tags and that 0.006% encompassed both hunting and trapping. But it's a much more effective method. I actually didn't start trapping until just about 3 years ago, when I decided a trap could be out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I just couldn't. So that's the most effective way. Hunting, I think Jen mentioned that I run the Western Wolf Academy, and so it teaches hunting and trapping. Most hunters in Idaho, most of those tags are filled incidentally. So it's people out elk hunting, they're calling in a wolf. They're hunting for elk, but a wolf runs in and they shoot it, which is awesome. But then usually they never get a wolf again. And so the point of the Wolf Academy was to teach people how to specifically target wolves, because my husband and I hunted for years and years and failed because it's so hard, and it took so long for us to get in the rhythm and learn their behaviors and patterns to successfully and consistently hunt them. And we teamed up with Tom Snyder from Stuck in the Rut, who's up in northern Idaho, and same thing. It took him years and years before he started getting consistent. And we became friends and started swapping stories and learning from each other and how he hunts, and we told him how we hunt. And finally, once we felt we were at a place that we can do this year after year consistently with both hunting and trapping, we came up with this academy. because they have a large territory and they are extremely smart, and there's no information out there on how to hunt and trap them. You have Elk 101 for elk and all these different things on how to hunt muleys and whitetail, but there's nothing for wolves. And so that's where this class came from. And what we teach is different terrains and how to hunt them, different calls to use, what their howls mean. And this is just from our experiences and talking to other successful wolf hunters and what to do in certain situations. We teach where to find them on maps, their behaviors, because during certain times of years, they're denned up or they're using their travel corridors or rendezvous points. And so it's a lot to learn, and they're so intelligent and so hard to hunt. But trapping, they're smart. So trapping's hard too, but it's definitely more effective than hunting.
Can out-of-staters get a wolf license in Idaho?
Yep. And it's an over-the-counter tag, and I think it might have changed, but it was about, last time I checked, I think it was $31.50 for an out-of-state tag.
Wow.
I think we need to make a road trip.
We might all be coming.
Let me take you out because I don't want you guys screwed. No, I'm just kidding. But that's why I want to teach people how to do it, because now, and you guys will find if you guys get a consistent season, is if you have people that don't know what they're doing, get on a pack and miss, then that wolf pack's going to be extremely hard to hunt from there on out.
So much harder.
Yeah. And so that's why I try to push out as much information as I can. Because I'm like, if you're going to come here and you get a shot, make it count.
Yep.
And I will second that with how hard trapping predators is too. I'm not a trapper. And I've never tried anything to the extent of Kate, but like back home when I was in Iowa, I had chickens and I had to protect my chicken coop. And so not being a trapper, I tried trapping to do that. I had, some coyotes and bobcat issue and, mink and stuff like that. And I couldn't do it. I tried. And I think that is really hard. Like, unless you have put years in and become a really seasoned trapper, it's not something that you're going to go out and just be able to trap a wolf. Like, I really respect the trappers that know all that and can do that, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of knowledge and experience to be able to do that.
I will say I know how to trap nothing else but wolves. That's the only thing I've ever trapped.
So what method do you use, Kate? Is it footholds, snares?
Yeah, I've never used snares. I use footholds, and I do it both off of dirt hole sets and piss posts. And my method is learning a pack. So the first pack I ever trapped, I was watching them consistently and I was hunting them, but they were a pack way up in the mountains during the winter in snow levels that I couldn't keep up with. And so I'd spot them at 3,000 yards. And when I'd cut the distance, they were 3,000 yards away, because 4 legs always beats 2. And so I was like, that's it. My husband and I were like, we're going to trap. And I won a set of 6 traps at an auction, and we put them out. And we knew where we were seeing them run through consistently. And so we put out 6, and we luckily had a really good mentor who taught us everything we know about trapping. He had been doing it for years. And it took 6 weeks, but 6 weeks to the day of us putting them out, we walked up one day and there were 4 wolves. Well, that's a lie. They had run off with our traps and we had to track them for 19 miles, but there were, we gotta. Beginner's mistake.
Wow, that's a lot of work, though. I'm just thinking of all the work that was just to even, find your first success. That's a lot. And I don't know if a lot of people would really, do that.
Well, and that's kind of our method too, is you want to go where no one else is going. That's how I hunt. And that's kind of how we trap, we hiked them in far and away from where people wouldn't want to go. And that's where wolves are going to least expect it too, especially if they're educated with traps. And I'll say I've trapped that pack for 3 years. I usually get them down to 2 or 3, and they always reproduce. And right now I have it down to 3 again. But the last time they came in, they came where no wolf would ever come, and they came behind the trap, smelled from the top where they normally wouldn't because they're so educated. And those are 3 wolves I'll just never catch. And that's just unless I get really smart or they get really dumb. And I don't think either of those are going to happen.
So what's the average size of that pack typically? Are we talking 6, 10?
So this pack, average about 6 or 7. Okay. There's another pack I'm bringing my traps out in the next couple of days that I found, and they're about 10 strong right now so far that I can count.
Okay.
And so it depends, and that's a pack that I've been hammering consistently, and they still every year 6 or 7, and so
I think it makes sense that trapping is the best source for you guys, with, like you said, being way up in the mountains and the deep snow, and also that they have such a large territory that, man, it would be hard to know where they are from day to day.
It is. And I will say, like February is my favorite time to hunt wolves because it's their mating season. So they're more territorial, they're more vocal, and that's when I love to hunt them. That being said, our friend who runs the Wolf Academy with us, he loves August because there's younger pups. They're pretty dumb at that point, just kind of running into any call. And so it's interesting. There's a couple of different good times to hunt them.
So I don't know how to.
I had my dog barking outside. It's a great Pyrenees.
Yeah, mine was whining too.
Great Pyrenees. You have one of those.
Yeah, right here.
Yep.
Best dog ever.
They are the best dogs ever.
Yeah, that's why I can't do this at my house, because he barks constantly.
Yes, gosh. Sweetest dog.
I had Pyrenees growing up. I had 2 of them growing up.
Yeah. Really?
Yep.
I love it. This is my first one.
Yeah, we had.
I'll never get another dog.
Yeah, Canyon was my first one too, and I won't probably ever have another.
I had 3. So we had 2. I had from a ranch in southern Kansas, and we had sheep and horses, and the 2 main ones stayed with the sheep all the time. They would stay with them because we have coyotes, predators back home, so they would protect the sheep, and they lived with the sheep 24/7. And then we got rid of some of that, and then got rid of the dogs, gave them to. They kind of moved with the sheep. Actually, when we sold some of the sheep, the dogs went with them, so it worked out good. And then I got a pup at a sheep sale, believe it or not, and brought her home, and she was great. And we didn't let her in the house, which I was kind of upset about, but it was awesome. I loved her so much. I love Great Pyrenees.
Yeah.
I'd have one now if my wife would let me, but
not a chance.
Yeah.
Not the way they would.
Mine's useless. He's definitely a house dog. We got him because of the wolves. Actually, we have wolves and bears in the yard, and we were like, well, we have 2 little kids, and I know there's been like, I don't know if you guys have heard the studies on Great Pyrenees or the cases of them like destroying whole wolf packs, protecting sheep. But there's some pretty cool stories out there. And so we got one, and he's useless. He's just like a couch potato that just like wants to love on you all the time.
Potato too. And mine wakes me up at 4 every morning to snuggle. At Wolf.report, citizen science means that you provide the data and we provide the platform. Our website is designed for the citizens, hunters, trappers, and anybody else in Minnesota to easily report wolf encounters and share location data.
You just did a post, didn't you, Kate, with a bear that was sleeping in the yard?
We have it like an apple orchard right outside our front porch. And so every spring and fall, I walk out and the bears are just hanging out. And so, last year our 5-year-old was out picking apples, and I called her in, and I went out 5 minutes later, and this huge black bear was right where she had been. I was like,
oh wow. Gosh.
Yeah. Wow.
So you got all kinds of critters out there in Idaho. Then black bears. Do you have grizzlies?
So we have grizzlies, not in our area. Well, we do in our area, but very few and far between. I've lived here about 4 years and only seen one track ever, but up north they're heavy. So can't hunt them, and that's kind of the same issue with that you guys have with wolves. It's getting dangerous up there because they're not scared of people, and so that's a battle. That's a battle I think in Montana right now is with wolf trapping. They're shutting down trapping areas because it's grizzly habitat, and so they don't want trappers to catch a grizzly, but then in turn you're not getting to manage wolves properly.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And so
wow.
Yeah, because I was looking at your Instagram page, Kate. You got all kinds of animals you've taken, and I could have swore I saw you with grizzlies, moose, and everything in between.
Oh, so
is that
moose, yes. That bear looks like a grizzly. It's actually a color phase black bear.
Really?
Yeah.
Huge.
It was a big guy. And in our area, it took me years before I actually was able to get a jet black bear. You can always find color phase, but jet black ones are really hard to come by in my area.
Huh.
It's the opposite around here.
I was going to say it's hard to get a color phase.
Yeah, it's tough to get a color phase around here.
Switch spots.
We got plenty of bears around here.
You know, and we've got a great guide service locally that we know too that for black bears. So we could set you up.
Yeah.
Yes.
So with that, I mean, we could jump right into, Jen, a little bit about, how you became adventurous or how this kind of started and kind of allude to that. So.
Yeah, I think probably it stems back to, my dad's always been an avid hunter. So I grew up around that and reading his hunting and fishing magazines, probably. I just have always had a love for magazines and print specifically. And then there's just always been such a void for women. So, and even what's been done before for women's media is a lot of times doesn't necessarily give credit to women, like the stories that I used to always see, is like how to take your girlfriend hunting or, my first buck story. And neither of them are really giving credit to the woman at all. And being an experienced hunter or anything, it's all just being completely new to it or inexperienced. And so this is a really big thing for me with Adventuress is really crediting women with their experience and knowledge. And I think that's really important, even though this is for women, but for youth, that this is all done very clean and respectable. So it's great role models for youth. I grew up not having a single woman role model in the outdoors. So that's something that's very cool to me, how much that has changed in such a little time, in our lives. And then also that I think it's important that men see it from this perspective, that there are women who are very experienced and truly love doing this. I mean, I've had people that have tried to tell me that I don't actually love, and deserve to be in the woods because I'm a woman. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, I've known nothing but this lifestyle. This is my life. And so it's shocking that there's still guys that, believe that women can't, really love and know anything about the outdoors. That's so false. And so I've really gone against the grain in a lot of ways with Adventuress. So again, that's very important to me. And then also helping women to get featured for the right reasons. So much in media with the hunting and fishing, or well, not media, but for the hunting and fishing industry has been, featuring and giving attention to women for, their bodies instead of their knowledge. And so that's a really big thing for me, again, that this is a very clean and respectable magazine. And that's truly highlighting women for their experience and knowledge and for the right reasons. And to just support women with that, of getting information, of gear specifically for them, tactics specifically for them. I grew up around the outdoors thanks to my dad and my older brother. But honestly, I've had to learn so much on my own to do everything my own way, because I don't or can't hunt the same way as them. I have to have different gear. Things are harder for me. I can't carry as much weight. There really is such a big difference for our needs. So this is all specifically with those things in mind, to help women learn, and the support to, try something new, because sometimes that can be intimidating for women as well, especially if they're very new to the outdoors. Kind of just all of that combined, and helping women to share this. So supporting them with, having opportunities to be in a magazine. Even our top women hunters don't have that, far and few between. So how amazing that, they can be featured and share those things. And so, that's very important.
Hunting skills instead of their looks.
And have a chance to be, on the cover of a magazine, like, a guy's magazine. So, and, this has really been created so that anybody can learn from it, though, even though it's specifically for women. So, I hear great reviews of families that, they have a subscription to Adventuress. The woman does, but then that the youth, the kids and the guy also really like learning from it as well. So, and this all kind of just reflects on me too, coming full circle. Like, I'm a person that I really love learning new things, and I kind of just see the details and stuff and what's missing. And, also if I have questions, I'm sure somebody else has that same question. And so I really plug all of that of my extensive outdoor background into the magazine as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great magazine. I learned a few things with the tip-up fishing and the camping on ice as well. So, I thought it was great. And obviously the Managing Wolves article, I had no idea everything over in, in the Western states. So, it was eye-opening to me too. So I thought it was really nice, really well put together. So great job on that.
You're doing awesome.
What has been your response locally on the Meg, Jen? Have you gotten a whole lot of feedback from the ladies in northern Minnesota?
If I've received feedback on the magazine in general, or this, issue.
How has it been accepted around here is what I'm curious about.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm newer to this area in general. I really felt like I didn't get a lot of support back home in Iowa. So I do feel like Minnesota has really picked me up and supported me a lot more, especially as a new person. And I think, Iowa's supposed to be Iowa nice too. But I think what it is that, even though I lived the outdoors back home, it wasn't like something that was very typical and like a foundation of families, growing up and hunting and fishing. Whereas in northern Minnesota, that really is like a foundation. Like, even if people don't hardcore hunt and fish, they grew up, joining for rifle opener. They, go into deer camp. They, go fishing. That's such a huge thing here. So even if it's not, a major part of their lives, they accept it. And I think that might be the biggest thing to why I'm so accepted up here. And so that's definitely been a big help. And I've continued to try to get that local Minnesota support to continue Adventurous with, because I'm still trying to grow it so that I can secure its future.
Yeah. Awesome.
Well, that's great. And I know my daughter hunted last year, was her first deer season, and she was successful. I wasn't with her, but somebody else was, so that was great. But we've always instilled in our daughters,
Right.
Hunting, fishing, shooting, bow hunting. I'd like her to get into more bow hunting, but my daughter actually likes to shoot rifles quite a bit and loves fishing and, to try to be outdoors and everything. So it's, I think this is a great magazine for young ladies growing up as well to learn some of that and see, like Kate on the cover, like you said, that, wow, she can, hunt and trap wolves. That's pretty cool. So
yeah, girls can be better than
And
guys for sure.
I would like to plug that in with like most guys are probably who is listening to this podcast. That I do think guys are dropping the ball at least a little bit because, like I've tried to go to trade shows for, for most of it is, guys there, and they don't think to buy this for their wife or their girlfriend or their daughter or their mother or their sister. They don't think of buying it for women. And I wish that would change because this is really a great way to just kind of support them. And so especially dads, I hope, you'll think about subscribing your daughter so that she can have role models. And that can just, even if she has just a little bit of spark of interest in the outdoors, like this can really help her, just seeing other women doing this and being successful. And that makes all the difference. Like I said, again, that I never had that growing up. And there's things that if I, would have thought back and saw another woman doing that, I would have totally wanted to do that too. But it was just, I didn't have anybody to even, know that as a girl, I could say, hey, I want to do that too,
Right.
So all of that really is a big influence and makes a difference. So I encourage guys to subscribe.
Right. No, I think it's great because, I mean, the girls can either look at something like this or, we all see how the other girls do it sometimes on Instagram and whatnot. And I'd much rather have my daughters see it this way than that way.
Yeah. And also just the world as a whole, like women are really seeing so many inappropriate photos. We are bombarded by that. And the world is trying to make that normal.
Right.
And so this is just a really great way to have role models and encourage them in the right way.
Yeah, and to get, ladies in the outdoor world and everything else. And, even at MDHA, we are always striving to, get memberships, from the ladies and everything. So I think a magazine like this would really help that because it makes it more normal, easier for people to see that. That must be the Great Pyrenees coming up.
That one was my lab.
Oh. No, that's great. I think you do a great job with Adventures, Jen.
Absolutely.
And I really enjoy it.
I wanted to ask you, Jen, about your pictures. I've seen you with online with bows and bobcats, and was it a coyote too?
Yeah. So I actually have with moving to Minnesota, I've had a big change in my outdoors within just the last few years. But my background is actually all in bow hunting. I've actually not rifle hunted or gun hunted for big game at all. So yeah, bow hunting was my thing, and really devoted the fall to bow hunting deer. And very much on passing deer and gaining history with them. And then also, I've never actually targeted predators specifically for hunting, but definitely taken those predator management opportunities when I've been in the stand deer hunting. So I've actually gotten 3 coyotes with my bow and a bobcat with my bow while I was in the tree stand. So, and then also turkey hunting with a bow is a very big thing for me. And I still go back each spring back home to turkey hunt.
That's what I've wanted to do is get a turkey with my bow. or even a coyote with my bow would be awesome.
I've seen them twice in the stand.
Yeah.
Predators definitely, my experience with a bow, that's been really hard. Actually, with my coyotes, most of the time that has taken 2 arrows to put them down within enough distance to find them. I've normally gotten 1 arrow in, and I think they react so quick too that it's hard with that first arrow, and then I've tracked them down to get a second arrow in them. So I definitely think predators are just so hard overall. And then also with my bobcat, that was 1 arrow, but that was the hardest tracking job I have ever had, because that cat was so fast, and just Zoom was through all of this little brush, and there was barely any blood trail. I was crawling on my hands and knees trying to find that thing. Those have been really, really hard hunts, and being successfully getting them in the end. So I'm very proud of those.
That's cool.
Yeah, impressive.
So I've got to ask, what do you shoot for a bow? What brand?
I'm not really particular with any bow brand or anything necessarily. I had a Martin back in the day that thing was the extension of my arm, and I wish I could just shoot that old bow for the rest of my life, but some issues were starting to come up. So actually, Martin they had taken a pause in the past with some of their bows and stuff, and then relaunched again kind of with the company, and they had saw my success with my old Martin bow, and so they had actually worked with me. So I shoot a Martin,
Cool.
But yeah, I have very old specs. I'm very old fashioned in many ways. So of course I have a print magazine, but it goes back to my bow too. I have very old fashioned specs. And so I don't actually fit a lot of the bows nowadays. And also structurally, I'm very odd for a woman too. I'm lanky, so I need, a woman's lesser poundage, but I need a guy's draw length. And so it's actually really hard to find a bow for me.
Gotcha. There's nothing wrong with Martin. I shot my biggest deer with a Martin, in old Martin.
Awesome.
So
good.
We just always have to ask, because we have a debate over bow brands. Kate, do you shoot archery?
Okay.
I do. I'm actually the opposite of Jen. I'm I was solely rifle and more long range, especially here when most of the stuff we hunt, we're deep in the backcountry. You're shooting across canyons. And so the hard part tends to be obviously getting the windage right and knowing your ballistics and everything. But then once you pull that trigger and get an animal down, the hard part's getting there over to it.
Yeah.
You're taking 600 to 800 yard shots, and then you're hey, now the real work begins. Let's go. But I guess I picked up a bow 3 years ago now, maybe. And let's see, I shoot a Matthews Avail, and it was just so foreign to me, just with a bow and getting close. I wanted to archery elk hunt. I think the first thing I took with a bow, I was 6 months pregnant, and I just shot a muley doe. And that I was stalked in by myself. I was I'm gonna die in this snow. It was in a late season tag in December. And then the next year I spot and stalked a whitetail buck. And then this year I finally went out archery elk hunting, and I was by myself basically the entire season, and I can't call worth a darn. So I was just walking through the woods hoping to get lucky, and I came so close a couple of times, and just by user error blew it. But I'm hoping this year my goal for this spring bear is to get a bear with a bow, and then I'll archery elk hunt again.
That would be cool.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And that is something I really love about hunting, is that there is so many different aspects of hunting, you know, where you do have that long distance and like totally different scenario than I do for deer hunting, you know, and shooting everything within 20 yards,
Right.
you know.
Yep.
But then also, so I grew up with a bow and I've been shooting a bow since I was 3 or 4 years old. But then I got into gun hunting when I was in my 20s. I really hadn't done any shooting with a gun at all, like until I was in my 20s. And so that's been a really interesting thing to me to learn. And I really appreciate all the different types of hunting, you know, like bow hunting. I'm by myself. I don't want to be near anybody, of course. And that's like a solo challenge that means a lot to me. But then on the other aspect, I absolutely love dove hunting, where we are in a field of just a row of hunters all the way down and shots going off all over the place. And, you know, like you can love all these different types of hunting. Like that is so cool about it all, I think. And so it's neat to hear about Kate's completely opposite experience.
That's kind of such an important thing you brought up, was there's so many different aspects of hunting, and it's so important we all stick together, because the hunting community as a whole is fairly small. And so you guys lose, I mean, you don't have wolf hunting right now, but you get it back, you lose it. That's an attack on all hunting. They're just one step closer to getting rid of bear hunting. And then, you know, it's just, we all have to stick together on those issues, whether, you know, it's all hunting and the morals and beliefs behind it.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. You know, and that's something that we obviously try to preach more than, let's say, it goes on deaf ears more than not, you know, but hunters need to stick together, you know, on all aspects of it, whether or not you bow hunt, whether or not you rifle hunt
or crossbow hunt,
use a crossbow, use a muzzleloader, traditional, or, you know, the new inline, or anything like that. So, or if you shoot a 6.5 Creedmoor, Jared, we got to make fun of Jared, our ED, which Kate, I got to ask, what caliber do you shoot?
So currently, let's see, last season I was shooting a 300 Norma. But I will say the first black bear I ever killed was a 6.5 Creedmoor.
So there is hope. I'll give it that. There is hope.
But yeah, I've been shooting a 7 Somm and a 300 Norma, switching back and forth. But I think I'm going to go to a 7 PRC this year.
Yeah, I've been really looking at those PRCs, even the 6.5 or the 7. I've really been looking at those, so that's pretty neat.
I shot a 6.5 PRC for a really long time, and I really liked it. I took down a bull elk at, I think it was at around 860 yards with a 6.5 284.
You know, this is not fair. This is not fair. I'm moving.
All right,
moving out west. I actually lived in Wyoming for a few years, but I guess. I got to get back out there. We got to do some hunting out there.
I love it.
I think that is a good point to bring up too, of how some people will move with, you know, if the wolf problems continue and stuff. Like, for instance, Kate moved to an area where she could, you know, have more hunting opportunities. And I just think, wow, the state should be paying attention to things like that too, that it does affect where people choose to live.
Yeah.
Right. Well, because the deer hunting has been suffering because of it. And, you know, around here, that's a big issue.
Yes.
Everybody grows up deer hunting here.
Well, so I would think your deer, not only are they getting murked by wolves constantly, but they're probably on more high alert all the time than they would be if they didn't have wolves. So do you guys mainly hunt in stands? How does it work?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would think that makes it so hard when they're constantly alert.
I couldn't spot and stalk.
Yeah,
there's nothing keeping this.
Yeah, we need oxygen around here.
I recently this year started saddle hunting. Tried it one time for a weekend, and that was really neat. So, and let me tell you, that takes a good core, which I don't have a good core, but I'm hoping if I keep it up, then it'll work for me. But that was pretty neat. But otherwise, yeah, it's mainly there are people that, you know, kind of that
wander through the woods, maybe.
Yeah, but most of our hunting is stands.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so I would think being that close and trying not to move because every little movement, that deer is going to be like, is that a wolf about to come out?
Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, and definitely some certain areas further north have definitely seen a lot more issues with where the wolves have chased the deers off. If they haven't killed them all right, they've chased them away.
Yeah.
And I think the state is I don't think really anybody's talking about that, is how people, I mean, I've heard it a lot just on Wolf Report, people saying, I'm going to move. Why even hunt here anymore? We don't even see a deer.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I think, are, even if they don't move, they're moving their hunting out of the state.
Out of state. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something I definitely think of a lot. Coming from where I came from, this is completely different deer hunting in northern Minnesota. And that's a big deal to me. If I would be like, okay, if I stay here, I never really get to hunt deer again. That's
right.
a big decision for me that, to think about.
Yeah. And kind of the same thing, Southern Kansas. So I go back and hunt every couple of years. But it's one of those things to where obviously it is noticeable. It's totally different hunting, like you stated. But if the state starts losing money on hunting because people are going out of state, then obviously that's something to notice.
You would hope they don't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's a lot of money that the state is losing as they lose, people stop buying their license and deer tags because they don't think they're going to see a deer here. They are, going out of state to hunt somewhere else. Like, that's a lot of shifting.
Yeah, it just compounds with the small towns too, the restaurants and the gas stations. Absolutely. They don't get that traffic anymore. And that's already happening.
Yeah.
That already happened even this winter with such a light winter for, there wasn't the snowmobile traffic.
Right.
Ice fishermen. There wasn't as many of them in the area as well. So it all contributes. But that also is where, again, management is a big key. And, I'm going to plug MDHA here. That's where we've been, working on management of, deer and wolves wildlife for, 44 years now.
Yeah.
And so this year, obviously it's in everybody's face and more prevalent than ever. And that's where we're working on a few legislation bills that are in the House right now. And so we're hoping that is obviously a big step forward if we can get that moved. And hopefully that'll get us our wolf season that much sooner. So
yeah, and hopefully soon you guys will be like Idaho, where you can just go after them.
Right.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That'll take a while, but
yeah, it's definitely going to take a while. But yeah, so we've got just kind of reiterate again. I know we've have it all over our social media, but our House Bill 3903 and Senate Bill 3988 talks about the wolf management and the wolf hunt in Minnesota. So we're hoping we can get those pushed forward with these bipartisan bills, which is a big part, which obviously goes back to hunters. All hunters need to stick together.
Right. Which up here we struggle with that.
We struggle. Yes, we do. And I'm sure in Idaho, you probably do a little bit as well.
Yeah, it's, you have everything. You have the baiting, spot and stock, hound hunters, and we all want the same thing in the end. So hopefully we can all figure it out and stick together.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to learn how to do around here in northern Minnesota, because we have a couple different factions, and it's almost like it's becoming politicized, unfortunately.
Yes, the wolf has definitely, and everything has become politicized, and it needs to. We all have the same goal,
right?
And we need to focus on that goal, and that is managing the wolves,
right?
Yes.
Well, and I want to thank you guys for even doing this podcast, because like we've talked about, it's controversial. So just being able to, and having it in your magazine, just being able to force the issue and talk about it, because a lot of people or companies want nothing to do with that because they don't want to ruffle any feathers. And so it's super important.
poke the bear. And I'm sure, Jen, you've already probably gotten some online hate just from probably dealing with MDHA.
Yeah. So back in the day, for my first coyote that I had shot with a bow, that was on YouTube, and that was like my first like really big experience of experiencing so much anti-hunter hate. So that has always been with me, and then with doing this issue, I mean, honestly, I thought a good month about, how do I really do this? How do I do this? Can I put this on the cover? Not knowing, am I going to receive hate? Am I going to lose followers? Am I going to lose advertisers? Also, am I putting Kate in the way of receiving hate, which I already kind of knew she probably received a lot.
I've read some of those comments.
But I still had, a serious conversation with her. Like, I just want you to know, I'm putting you on the cover, and is this okay that we might really receive hate for this?
Which was
to
so
me,
nice
it's
of
just,
you. And I was like, oh, it's no big deal. I was like, that happens all the time.
Yeah. But I really did worry about, if something like this was going to happen to hurt the magazine. And in the end, it's like, I'm going to stand up for what is right. And if that would, in turn in the magazine, then so be it. I'm going to take a stand for what is right. So that's just super important to me. And, but yeah, hate is a really big part of this, that, you have to take it. And unfortunately with this, it's been experiencing hate from other pro-wolf management groups in Minnesota, which was the last thing I expected. I was expecting the anti-hunter hate and buckling down for that. And actually, I have received extremely little. I'm surprised by how daring this cover is. Daring but awesome. This cover is. But actually, the anti-hunter thing hasn't been an issue. And if anybody makes a comment against, with some thoughts against it or something, they are all people who have not read the article. So I encourage them to, buy the article. And, even with MDHA, we are giving copies out for free in Minnesota. So I just encourage them to actually read the facts. But, sometimes there's people that they don't want to know the facts, to be honest. They want to think what they want to think.
We already know the facts.
So I can easily ignore those people. But receiving hate from fellow hunters that are in a pro-wolf management group, I think has been absolutely ridiculous. I actually had to block a number of Minnesota hunters from my Adventuress page, which I think that is so sad and again ridiculous. That
Send him over to me. I'll talk to him.
I'm somebody that's not going to necessarily waste my energy on things that, if it's not worth it. But if you push me where it's worth it, I'm going to stand up against you. And so I have done that to some of them. Because again, this is a much bigger issue, that hunters need to be joined together. I don't care if you're a bow hunter, you're a crossbow hunter, you're a rifle hunter, you're a deer hunter, you're an elk hunter, you're any kind of hunter. It doesn't matter. We are all being affected by this, and non-hunters are being affected by this too. I would think that any landowners in northern Minnesota should be really, sticking to this debate and what's happening, because they are being affected too.
Well, and even state to state, it doesn't matter if you have wolves in your state or not. This is at a federal level, and they're coming after hunting all across the board.
Yes.
Yeah, and when hunters are split like this, it's just going to make it easier for them to go after any form of hunting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I get asked about this a lot, like what, and again, this is going off of or away from facts and stuff, things we can't necessarily prove, but, people will ask, what I really think is happening. And, I think that this does play into all those bigger things, like they can't take away guns. So what do? You make ammo hard to purchase. They can't do away with hunting. So what do? You make hunting harder. All of that things. This also, if the wolves are devastating the other animals, that's also taking food sources away and ways people can provide for themselves. So I think all of this comes into play that, even those things we can't pinpoint and say, this is what they're doing for sure. Those are things that are, seeming pretty obvious too, that we're being affected in, and we need to know the facts and, kind of wake up to doing what's right. And, it's all important.
Yeah. And it's obviously something you just can't change it overnight. And this has obviously been compounding years and years and years. We've always known there's, a wolf issue. But it became political, always has been political to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And, this is something that hunters have been advocating for years. MDHA has been advocating for and trying to get legislation passed. And so if everybody joins together, then obviously you have a bigger voice. You have, then you can go to your legislators and say, we want this done. Otherwise, you're not going to get voted on. You're not going to get voted again. So, I mean, which is sad. It has to come to that.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be as political as what it is. But that's a world we live in nowadays.
Right.
And I think that's a really big thing too, is like you said, how it's getting non-hunters, saying something and taking a stand too, because right now, again, with this all becoming political, what they do is they make this where hunters look bad. Like, for example, in this article, in my breakout, I gave a quote that a representative gave from Minnesota about previous wolf hunting within the state, and said most of them were killed for fun, display of their pelts, or for bragging rights. They're just making hunters sound awful. But when you start getting the attention of all the non-hunters saying stuff too, well, that kind of changes the game here, So I really think this is in so many ways a group effort of everybody coming together for the good of Minnesota, the good of their state, their area, wherever they're at, and for their wildlife and their ecosystem and their way of life,
Yeah. No matter what, no matter what group you belong to or anything, you're a hunter. You should join the fight on every aspect.
Right. And I mean, if they're true hunters, they should be hunters first before anything else, in my opinion.
Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think with wolves, or any animal really, but with wolves here, like, I respect wolves so much. And I started respecting them more when I started hunting and trapping them, because you realize what a savvy, intelligent, just like hard animal they are, just tough creatures. And, you have the anti-hunter over there, like, oh, I love wolves, they're so beautiful. And they have no idea what goes on with these animals. And I would say most hunters respect animals more than anybody that doesn't hunt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that's definitely a false thing with, some non-hunters or anti-hunters thinking that we're against animals or just killers. Really, we're the opposite. We're conservationists and really about protecting the wildlife and the land.
Absolutely.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, definitely. Well, boy, that was a good conversation that we had.
Time flies.
Yeah, time flies. I mean, we could.
I could do this all day.
Right. Yeah. No, that's cool. So where can they get Adventuress Magazine, Jen?
Yes, you can go online to adventurousmagazine.com, and that's adventurous with 2 S's on the end. So adventurousmagazine.com. You can also find it on Facebook and Instagram. And with this current wolf issue, we will be giving out 300 more copies for free at the Shakopee show here later this week.
At the Deer and Turkey Classic.
Yeah,
right?
Outdoor News Deer and Turkey Classic. Yeah. Yep.
Yes. So that's also a way you can get a free issue or subscribe online or get a single issue online. Why we're doing this and why I've been working with Minnesota Deer Hunters Association is so that we can get this issue and this article out to more people, as many people as we can, on the facts and again, the perspective of women hunters, which hasn't been done like this before, and just helping to inform people.
Yes, definitely. Information is the key, and get rid of some of those misinformation, I guess is the best way to say it. So this definitely puts a light on that, and it might even turn a few that didn't think the wolf issue was as bad. They read this article, it really might make them better understand how managing wolves is very important to, like we've talked about, the ecosystem.
And it doesn't mean eradicating the wolves.
No, definitely not. Mm-hmm. No.
Yeah, the numbers and the history and what's happening today it's all shocking. So, like I said, Kate did such a great job with this article that, we really stuck to facts that, it's not something really to argue. It's just informing people of what's been going on and what, we have for concerns in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great article, great photos. Those are awesome.
That's very well.
Her photos are epic. That's worth the magazine alone is seeing Kate's photos.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you, ladies, for everything.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for spending your Friday evening and hanging out with us too.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
And Kate, thank you for joining in on this. This was really a unique perspective, I think, for Minnesota listeners to hear about Idaho.
Well, thank you guys. That's my favorite subject.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, we may have to talk about making the trip out to Idaho one of these times.
Oh, wouldn't that be something? Especially you can buy the tags over the counter.
Exactly.
That sounds easy.
And we have to visit the Western. Yeah, I was just going to say we should make a trip out to Idaho and check out that Western Wolf Academy. And where can they find more information about that, Kate?
So the Western Wolf Academy, this one's going to be held July 11th through the 14th. It's in Idaho at this private guest ranch. I think I went over a little bit about what we teach in it, behaviors, patterns, calling, and trapping as well. We do different seminars, and then we also have a one-of-a-kind air gun wolf course, and you shoot at life-size wolf targets, and it's set up in a way that through our own experiences. So it's experiences we've been in, and there's competitions. We time you because on a wolf hunt, it's quick and sometimes you're running. And so it's lodging and meals are included. And we had last year some awesome giveaways, such as a suppressor from AB Suppressors and some thermal scopes and stuff, because in Idaho, you can, in certain units during certain times of year, hunt with thermals for wolves. And so that information can be found by contacting me on Instagram or on Facebook. On Instagram, I'm Kate_small_outdoors. We also have a Western Wolf Academy page on Instagram, and you can also email me at katesmalloutdoors@gmail.com. We just got a website up, but it's like one of those long, it's not a short little Western Wolf Academy. So you can find that link in my bio on Instagram as well.
Awesome.
I have to ask you, Kate, before you go, what's elevation out there?
So I live at about 4,500. Our elevation, I hunt like muleys and stuff between like 7 and 9.
That's good enough.
So
Yeah, I die.
Yeah, I know. Last time I was in Colorado, I had a hard time walking across the parking lot, but I think that was at like 14,000 feet.
No, that's great. Well, we appreciate everything you ladies do.
Absolutely.
And love the magazine. I give out a lot of copies, and I'm going to keep giving out copies and see if we can get some more subscribers for you. And hopefully this will help too, and get some interest in it and whatnot. So
right. Hopefully we can give away some this next weekend, right?
Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, Jim and I are going to be down there as well, representing MDHA and Wolf Report.
Right.
And then, so it'll be great. And Jen with Adventuress will be down there, so it'll be a fun weekend. It's a really good show. It's a lot of fun. So
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
And giving us another perspective that I think a lot of people around here really need.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you guys for your time. And Kate, again, thank you so much for joining us. It was awesome to get to a podcast with you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on and inviting me. And it's been good. I'm so interested to hear how it goes for you guys.
Views expressed by Jamie and Dino or podcast guests are solely their own and do not represent the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association and Wolf Report.